to sift you as wheat. The sifting represents the taking of time for your demise. He don't want to just simply kill you, but he slowly but surely wants to strip away your joy. He wants to ruin your reputation. He wants to put your business out on the billboards of shame. He wants to have folk gossiping all over town about how you lost your job because of your drug habit, and how you lost your wife because of your drinking problem, and how you lost your house because of your gambling addiction. He wants to sift you as wheat. He wants to destroy you as an example and as a child of God. And so Samson had to endure this kind of slow torment. You know, folk were all around town. It was all up in the Jerusalem Inquirer. Samson, strong man. You remember him, the one that killed the Philistines with the jawbone of an ass. He's a slave. Come on, somebody. Up in the Philistine camp. You know how we do, girl. Did you hear about Samson? I heard he done lost his job. Hair got all cut off. The boy's blind. Y'all ain't gonna help me preach in here now. You know how we do. It was traveling all throughout the church circles. You know, yeah, Delilah done messed him up. I told him he shouldn't have been messing with that white girl. Y'all ain't gonna help me preach. That's what y'all said about OJ. Lord, help me preach here. All right. Their hearts were merry. They rejoiced in the fact that they had overtaken Samson and brought him into captivity. And once the enemy has us in captivity, he can relax. He can let his hair down. He can begin to rejoice. All he has to do is maintain a certain level of control. All he has to do is maintain a certain level of dominance. All he has to do is maintain a certain price over our head, a bounty, if you will, and he'll keep us in position where our freedom will cost us more than we are willing to pay. They called for Samson to come and perform for them. You who used to whoop up on us, come on and perform for me. Come on, somebody. Can you imagine that? Come and make a fool of yourself for our entertainment. Oh, yeah. Come and make a mockery of what once had been. He used to be a pillar of strength. He used to be a force to be reckoned with. He once stood as a symbol of strength and a symbol of integrity in the army of the Lord. But because he was so consumed by his fatal attraction, it would wind up costing him more than he was willing to pay. And as our text concludes, we find that indeed Samson's fatal attraction wound up costing him more than he was willing to pay, for we find that he wound up paying the ultimate price. He wound up paying with his life. For verse 30 lets us know that he ended up dying with the Philistines. And now I must admit that the first time I read this story, I thought it had a sad ending to it. But then I was reminded of what Paul said over in Romans 8:28. Anybody remember that text right there? It said, what? All things work together for the good for them that love God and are called according to his purpose. And if memory serves me correctly, Samson's original destiny was to deliver the children of Israel from the hands of their oppressor. And even though he allowed the fatal attraction to take him further than he wanted to go, even though he allowed the fatal attraction to keep him longer than he wanted to stay, even though he allowed the fatal attraction to cost him to pay more than he was willing to pay, aren't you glad that God's will was done anyway? Where you going with this, Pastor Swan? I'm just trying to tell some of us today that we may have been locked into the grip of a fatal attraction, and it may have taken our life off course. I want to tell you, it ain't over till God says it's over, and God's will can still be done in your life. I don't care how long you've been hooked. I don't care how long your son been hooked. I don't care how long you've been in that bad relationship. I don't care how long you've been on that dead-end job. God's will can still be done in your life. Aren't you glad that God's plan and God's purpose will always come to pass? Even though Samson had to lose his life, he still destroyed the Philistines. In fact, the Bible said that he destroyed more at his death than he did when he was alive. But the best part about this story is that the children of Israel were delivered from the hands of their enemy. In other words, I don't care what the enemy puts you through, God's will can still be done in your life. Aren't you glad that even though the enemy sucks us up and reels us in with the fatal attraction, although the enemy is able to take us further than we want to go, although he keeps us longer than we want to stay, although he costs us more than we're willing to pay, I'm glad that all things, look at somebody and say, all things, not some things, but all things. Not just a few things, but all things work together for the good for them that love God. I just wonder if there's anybody in here that loves the Lord. They used to sing that old song, I love the Lord. He heard my cry. He pitied every groan. Long as I live and trouble rise, I'll hasten to his throne. Bless his name. And if you love him today, it can still work out for your good. Late in the midnight hour, God is gonna turn it around. It will work in your favor. Bless his name. Samson had to die so the good could come out of it. And sometime our flesh has to die. Our will has to die. Our desires have to die so the good can come out of the circumstance, so God can get the glory. I'm reminded that God's original destiny for all mankind was for us to reign, for us to rule and have dominion over the earth. But one day in the midst of the garden, a serpent showed up and enticed Adam and Eve with a fatal attraction, and thereby he separated and isolated their relationship with the master. But I'm so glad that all things, Lord have mercy, work together, and the evidence is found in the fact that God sent his only begotten Son, one who was without sin, to stand in the place of a sinful world. In spite of all that they did to Jesus, Lord have mercy, in spite of the nails in his hand, nails in his feet, the crown on his head, all things, look at somebody and say, all things, yes, though they buried him in a tomb, all things, though he hung, bled and died, all things, bless his name. I'm just trying to tell somebody today, don't you worry about the situation. Don't you worry about the predicament. Don't you worry about the fatal attraction. Don't you worry about the habits. Don't you worry about the money problem.